Welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. And this year, we have a theme. All year, we are going to be talking about building sustainable influence. So make sure you follow along and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay all caught up. As always, I'm Scott, and joining me is our go-to magnificent leadership guru, Dr. Michael David Morales, aka Mo.
Hey, what's up, Scotty? You are my hype man for the year. Let's do it.
I'm a pretty good hype man.
You are. You're a really good hype man.
So
Nobody is as excited as you. I love it.
There is a movie called The Intern, and it's actually kind of one of my guilty pleasure movies. So I don't think it definitely didn't win any Academy Awards, but it's one of those feel-good films. But in the film, the main character is Ben Whitaker, who's played by Robert De Niro. And it's a little bit different role for him. I'm always used to seeing him in Goodfellas and things like Casino, and this is just very, very different role. But he plays a 70-year-old retiree who has kind of decided to shake things up by becoming an intern at a really fast-paced e-commerce startup. So despite kind of being unfamiliar with the tech, he dove headfirst into really just learning everything from smartphones to social media. But what really stood out was his emotional intelligence. So he was really quick to notice when his coworkers, especially the CEO, were stressed out or struggling. And he'd offer a kind of, a kind word or thoughtful advice. And really his wisdom and patience and steady presence helped ease the pressure in the office. And even the CEO appreciated his guidance when it came to balancing the demands of that growing business with his personal life. But it really wasn't, and Ben wasn't really just about surviving in the office. He actually just thrived in that office by taking ownership of even the mundane tasks that he was given. No matter how small, he built meaningful relationships with everyone around him. He had an incredibly strong work ethic and calm demeanor, and it just earned him the respect of his colleagues. And then additionally, his ability to empathize with others made him a trusted mentor to those who had even been in that business for years on end. So at the end of the day, Ben really showed that leadership isn't about age or title, that it's about how you lead yourself, stay adaptable, and help others along the way. So self-leadership is the key to effective leadership. It's about managing your thoughts, your emotions, and actions to help you reach your goals. So leaders who master self-leadership can set the right examples for their teams. And in this episode, if you haven't already caught on, we're going to dive into two important aspects, building lasting habits and managing your emotions, all of which contribute to the idea of self-leadership. And these practices can definitely help you grow both personally and professionally in the year ahead.
Man, that was quite the intro. I love it. By the way, I mentioned it before. When Andrew Carnegie of Andrew Carnegie Steel Company, back in the 20s, needed somebody to run that company and he needed an overhaul to be done, he went to Charles Schwab, paid the guy $1 million. And at that time, that was huge. Schwab didn't know anything about steel, but what he did know is he knew about people. So I have not seen the movie The Intern, but I love Robert De Niro. And you're right. It's a different role for him, and he was probably hilarious in it like he is in everything because he actually is a really funny guy. And it doesn't matter how old he was. And I haven't seen the movie, but it sounds to me like he used his ability to be a people person and his emotional intelligence, both his self-awareness and his social awareness, to be effective. And so that's what we want our people to do. We want you to be effective. And so we're going to give you a couple of ways to do that. And Scott mentioned that the first one that we want to talk about today is building sustainable habits. Nobody wants to hear about habits because it's really easy to develop bad habits and it's really hard to develop good habits. So I'm going to just give you right away something that you need to do today to build sustainable habits. And here it is. The first thing is start small for big change. Don't start with the big change. Start small. Small actions repeated daily are going to compound over time, and they're going to give you massive results. So this is often referred to as the 1% rule. And so if you can do something each day to get better, it's really going to add up. So to get even more specific for leadership, here's something you might want to think about. Mo, I don't journal. I've never journaled. Well, sorry to say, leaders need to write their stuff down. Scott's smiling because years ago at this point now, Scott, when I asked you if you journal, like, were you ever a journaler? I can't remember now.
You were really surprised because I said I don't journal and I don't set goals.
The two things that people have to do if they're hanging out with me. on a professional level. Scott didn't do either of
Yep.
them. And I said, okay, are you willing to do that? And Scott, it wasn't. So I said, you got to come up with a journal. And I don't care if you journal about your life, but I want you to come up with a leadership journal. And so he did. And then I said, what's the name of your journal? And he's like, I don't have a name of it. It's my leadership journal. And I said, how about Scotty P's Big Book of Leadership? And he was like, that's the one. And so now, whenever we talk about the things that Scott's doing in his life, we talk about Scotty P's Big Book of Leadership. And he's got a ton of stuff written down there. I don't see it, but I hear about it. I don't need to see your journal. Nobody needs to see your journal, but you need to see your journal. Jump into the 1%.
I don't know if I told you this, but when we're talking about doing things small, actually, you probably wouldn't know this. I do set goals now, but we have yet to go over my goals for this year. But one of the things that I set for this year as a goal was to take pauses throughout my day. And my dad actually showed me this great app at home that I've started to use. The goal is literally to pause, and it has different things that you can do for 10 seconds, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it may be. And I'm starting with 10 seconds. And so my goal is to do one 10-second pause every day. Put in my earphones, block everything out, close my eyes, and they've got nature sounds you can listen to or waves or whatever it is. But when we're talking about starting small, that was that thing that just really resonated in my head is something, it's only 10 seconds. That's such a small time out of the day. And so just great example of something that is small and even maybe smaller than what most people are thinking.
It really is. And so for our listeners, think of this. You want to begin with habits that are so easy you can't fail. Notice how Scott said, I'm not going to start by pausing for 2 minutes. 2 minutes, that's a long time when you're just sitting there and being quiet. But 10 seconds? Yeah, we've all been told by our moms growing up, stop, count to 10. Okay, I can count to 10. So that's a great one. Scott, you're not going to fail at that. How many days do you think it takes to form a habit?
30 days.
I remember 21 for some reason. It takes 66 days to form a habit. That is over 2 months. Starting small increases the likelihood that you're going to stick with it. So start today if you haven't already.
That just seems so far. When you think about how many people will just stop whatever their New Year's resolution is by the middle of, right at the middle of January, just know you've really got to go all the way to March. In a way, it's actually kind of comforting, I guess, because then you have that idea of, I only have to make it this far to help build a habit rather than I have to make it to December. It just gives you a great idea of, okay, I've only really got to make it this far. And then theoretically, it should kind of seem natural.
And another thing about building sustainable habits after you start small for big change is you want to focus on systems, not just goals. Because if you notice, Scott said, gosh, I didn't like goals. That's normal. It's easy to not want to set goals because that can set us up for failure. Goals are the outcomes. Systems are processes. To achieve a goal, you need a repeatable system that aligns with it. That's why we always talk about systems on this podcast. That's why I talk about systems with my clients. What are you doing to be successful? Instead of saying, back to the reading portion, instead of saying, I want to write a book, okay, commit to writing 200 words daily. That's a system that you can sustain over time. You can write 200 words. I'm not asking you to write 2,000 words, but you can't ever get to 2,000 words a day unless you start with 200 words a day. So break down your goals into actionable steps, integrate them into your daily routine. Just like Scott said, I'm going to stop and I'm going to pause. And so he has that for a goal. The system might be, I'm going to do that at least 6 days a week. You can put it on a to-do list. You can decide, am I going to do it in the morning? Am I going to do it in the afternoon? If you want to rise to the level of your goals, you have to really fall within the system. And I know it's difficult, but that's why you got to start small.
That really makes a lot of sense. And I would imagine that as you go throughout this process, that those systems they're not firm. As you hit certain points in the system, you might need to adapt that system. You might need to add into that system. You might need to grow that system, whatever it may be, to be able to help you reach potentially that next stage in whatever your goal is or whatever you're trying to do. Am I correct in that thinking?
It does. In fact, you accidentally went right into the second point for today, which is managing emotions effectively. It's all about mindset. So if you want to manage your emotions effectively so that you can make sure your goals are going to be attained, you've got to recognize the things that you're doing, good and bad. How do we manage emotions effectively? First of all, you have to recognize and address emotional triggers. Okay. So emotional triggers are situations or events that provoke strong reactions. Leaders have to identify triggers, the things that set them off and the things that cause them to do things they shouldn't be doing. You cannot, as a leader, be an impulsive person. You've got to learn to step back. You've got to learn to be calm, and you've got to learn to recognize those things that are going to put you in a bad situation. So a leader might find themselves frustrated during a high pressure meeting. Okay, it's intense. The boss is there. All of your colleagues are there. Instead of letting your emotions dictate your tone, breathe. Scott just said it, right? You need to learn how to breathe. In fact, there's a technique used by Navy SEALs to stay calm and be focused. Who needs to stay calm and be focused more than a Navy SEAL? This involves counts, holding, exhaling, all that stuff. It's gonna really help you in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many other different things too that I feel like you can use, and it's really so unique because it's whatever works best for you. And I've used box breathing personally, but then I've also used it during certain situations at my workplace to just help individuals calm down when they just feel too excited and or too aggravated. And so it's definitely been something to kind of help those individuals calm back down and kind of focus in on those situations, especially high pressure moments.
Yeah, one of my assistant coaches, I used to have him take our team through box breathing. And you know how many times we did it? Every single day. Because our student athletes needed to learn how to be calm in the big pressure moments. In the book that Daniel Goleman writes, named Emotional Intelligence, self-awareness and self-regulation are two of the 5 components to determine leadership effectiveness. So leaders, what are you doing to slow yourself down and to get ready to be effective when you need to be? Because you want to know when a leader needs to be effective? When the plane's on fire and everybody's screaming. That's when leadership is needed. If the plane's flying by itself, there's no need for a leader. But leaders, we live for the situations that things are messed up. When things go bad, the real leader will show himself. The real leader will show herself.
That reminds me, this past summer, was it? No, 2 summers ago, goodness gracious. My wife and I had the privilege and the honor of getting to see Jocko Willink speak live. And one of the things that I noticed as he would talk, there was a Q&A session where individuals could line up at a microphone and ask a question. And he always paused after they would ask the question, almost to the point where it was like, does he have an answer? And it almost left you wondering if he was actually going to answer the question. But then he took a little bit of extra time answering this one question for this individual, and he let the audience know. He said, I know it seems like I'm taking a long time to answer this question, but I want to deliver the most effective response with the least amount of words. And that in that moment, I was like, man, that's why he's pausing after every single question. He's focusing in, he's getting his thoughts under control, his emotions under control, and he's going to deliver something that is going to be from that high level, that high leadership lid perspective. And it was definitely a game changer once I realized that, once he kind of clarified.
A second thing that you need to do when dealing with the emotional piece, the emotional intelligence, is you need to learn from setbacks. It doesn't matter where you are in the leadership journey, you are going to screw it up. Here for me, a lot of times leaders don't get a lot of slack. You're supposed to make the right decision. And so people really come down hard on leaders. And so leaders have a lot of pressure that they put on themselves. But resilient leaders are going to embrace setbacks as learning opportunities. So instead of viewing failure as the end, they see it as part of the growth process. John Maxwell, famous of 21 Irrefutable Laws, has a book called Failing Forward. And he says, you don't win some, you lose some. Leaders, you might win some or learn some. You're either going to win it or you're going to learn it. And a lot of times the best things that we learn are from the failures. So since you're all listening and you're going to go into your leadership journal today, here's a great journal prompt. What's one of the big failures that you've had in the past 6 to 12 months that really set you back and made you think negative thoughts about yourself? Who was there to help you? Did anybody help you? Were you by yourself? You have to start doing these things. If you don't try to learn from these setbacks, you're just going to move forward, and chances are you're going to stumble over that same rock again.
And find someone who's on the leadership journey with you. So I feel I hate failing, but I also love when I fail. One of my favorite things is to be able to use that as an example with other people. And Mo, I talk to you all the time about things that I failed at, and you are always there with the leadership learning lesson of that moment. And it's so different when you have someone who's on that journey with you, or someone who understands from that leadership perspective to be able to talk through that failure. Even people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, they're all going to fail at things, but at the same time, they're going to have someone that they can work through things with, that they can talk through that failure to be able to just experience the growth that would come from part of it. And so I think that's really important for our listeners. Is you might be alone when you fail, but you don't have to walk through that failure by yourself, and you can even experience more growth with that.
I'm glad you said the names Bill Gates and Elon Musk, because when we hear those names, a lot of times we think, oh man, those guys are huge. They're way more successful than I am. There's no way I could ever do that. Well, let's take Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks. We both love him because he gives us the coffee that we love. Some people don't love Starbucks. I do. But if you read Howard Schultz's book, can you believe that he faced a lot of initial failures from the ideas that he brought? Because they didn't resonate with customers and they weren't working. But instead of giving up, what you could have done is he changed up his vision, he made some turns, and eventually created one of the most successful coffee brands in the entire world. What if Howard Schultz would have just given up? Leaders, you can't give up. If you got something big, if you believe in what you're doing, go forward. Anybody who is successful was always on the brink of complete failure. But that's what we need to do to be effective leaders. So embrace the failure, fail forward, learn from your mistakes. And so let me give you a practical tip. When you face your next setback, ask yourself, what went well? What did not go well? What do I need to do different next time? And then write all that down. That way you can look at it. Let me pull back the curtain a little bit. Here's something that I do often. Whatever day it is of the year, I will go back sometimes a year or 5 years or 10 years or even further back on that same day, X amount of years ago, and see what I was doing. What are the things that were important to me as a leader? What were important to me as a person? And let me tell you, once you've been journaling for that long, it's really going to humble you. And so make those changes. Be somebody who is emotionally stable so that you can be effective for your team. And trust me, it'll change your life.
Journaling and failures, two great topics from today. So Mo, before we head out, you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Yeah, I just would say that self-leadership is going to begin with intentionality. You're the one who has to take the reins. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to be willing to go on the journey. You have to be willing to ask people to come on the journey. You've got to share your progress with people. In fact, share your progress with us. We want to help people lead out of who they are so that they can be more effective wherever they are. Every year, I take more people on the journey. And so if you're not on an intentional journey, you need to get on that journey right now.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Mo. So always great stuff. Big thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Make sure you guys check out the show notes down below. Sign up for our newsletter. You guys can find us on all of our different platforms. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Until next time, lead with purpose and stay authentic.